Shalom and welcome to Biblical Faith with Sam Peak. We invite you to join us as Sam brings a study in the Torah from the Jewish sages. And now our speaker, Sam Peak.
Shalom Aleichem. Let's open this book, Pirkei Avot, based on Pirkei Avot, of course, is the chapters of the fathers in the Mishnah. I have to find my place. Page 178, I believe, if I'm in the right spot. And we'll get in the groove here in just a second. Anyway, we in this book put together for us by Rabbi Tuvia Basa and published, I think, by Art Scroll. I think Art Scroll published this. Yeah. And it's the Maharal, mainly the Maharal, Rabbi Judah Low of Prague, some of his commentary on Pirkei Avot. I do from time to time omit things, a few, one or two things, because number one, I don't know because I don't have the Maharal's commentary in front of me in Hebrew. And Rabbi Basser isn't always telling us what's coming from the Maharal and what's coming from him or from somebody else. And so certain things I don't get into just because I don't necessarily think it might be productive for us. But we're in chapter 3 of Pirkei Avot, and we're in Mishnah number 15. We've already talked about it some. Rabbi Elazar HaMoadi, the Moabite, okay? This is what he says. We almost finished this Mishnah, but not quite. One who desecrates sacred things or holy things. And we looked and saw what that actually is talking about. It means who doesn't have concern for them, who doesn't have any concern for what HaShem says are holy things. Who disgraces the festivals, the Chagim, who humiliates his fellow in public. Okay? And this is what we were talking about earlier, Tony, about even though that fellow might be an enemy, they're still made in the image of God. Okay? Who humiliates his fellow in public, who nullifies the covenant of our father Abraham, and that's always a reference to the Brit that God made with Abraham and his descendants, which is always a reference to circumcision. Okay? And it means literally in that area. All right? Or who perverts the Torah contrary to the halakha. That's a really big statement. There are many, many folks who do that. Because the halakha can only be established by the sages. The Torah is not a book that you can come to and say, oh, well, this is what I think that means, and that's the way I'll fulfill that commandment. No. That was the view of the Sadducees in the days of the first temple, and who were deadly enemies of the Pharisees, because the Pharisees established the concept of the halakha, of what is the law, how do we actually fulfill it, all right? And actually, I think probably Rabbi Elazar HaMoadi is writing this Mishnah in the context of the Sadducees, because we can almost go through and look at Sadducee history and see that they fall into this category of everything he is saying here. Unfortunately, that phenomenon didn't go away. It just changed names and changed groups and all kinds of things. There are a lot of people today who would fall into this category. Even though that person may have the Torah and good deeds, now listen to what Rabbi Elazar says. They have no place, or no chelik is the word. In fact, how does he say it? Ein lo chelik l'olam haba. They have no portion in the world to come. Now again, when we go to the commentary, what's in the commentary below us in English, it consistently says, what the translation is saying is that they won't be there. Okay? They won't be in the world to come. I don't actually think that's what that means. Because If he'd wanted to say it that way, he could have said it that way. The way he says it is ein lo chelek. Chelek is like we have a pie, okay? And we cut it, and everybody gets a certain part of it, a certain piece of it. So chelek is like a piece of it. It doesn't mean absence, it means a portion. And so the way I've always looked at this particular Mishnah is all these people who say these things, they may have Torah, they may have good deeds, they may even be believing in HaShem. They will be there, but because of their attitude towards holiness and towards holy things, they'll be poor people. It's almost like they'll be there, but they'll be homeless people.
He has no portion.
Yeah, it says
They have to be there.
Yeah.
To have it.
Yeah, ein lo. Not to him is a portion, l'olam haba, in the world to come. Okay, so we had looked at this a good bit, and we finally came to the last comment down here on the bottom of page 178, where the Maharal begins, and he says, another explanation. Another explanation is based, he says, on the observation that everything in the whole Mishnah is called Kodesh, is called holy, all right? The holiness of the sacrifices, they're Kodashim, the festivals, the covenant, the Brit, this also is holy with God. And the Torah, he says, all of those things are obvious. But he says, as well, there is no higher level of holiness to be found in all of creation, now this is interesting, than the human being who was created in the image of God. And therefore it is truly a desecration of holiness to humiliate a person in public. All right. Now, that doesn't mean that if a person's attacking you, you don't defend yourself. That's not what that means. It means going out of your way to embarrass another person in front of other people. And like we were talking before, and when you were asked the question even before the class started about what real wickedness is, and we were talking about how Rabbi Ashlag is showing us in his introduction to the Zohar, or maybe the introduction to the 10 Sefirot, that real wickedness is actually judging other people because we don't have all the facts, and ends up speaking about them in a negative way. And I think it also would fit into this. In other words, doing damage to another person. Even though that person may be totally living just according to their animal soul, the image is still there. Even though it may be completely hidden, it's still there. What the Maharal is trying to get across to us here is a human being, a person is he says there's no higher level of holiness. The concept of what he's talking about is absolutely unbelievable if we just dwelled on it for a little while. Anyway, but then sure as shooting, we would have it all fixed in our mind, and then you would meet somebody tomorrow who would convince you that a person is not holy at all. So we're not talking about what people say and what people do and all of that. We're talking about the very creation of human beings, of a human being, that is the highest level of holiness, because that's the pattern, not just for us, but it's the pattern of the whole universe. Everything was created according to that image. Okay. And he ends here, he says, it is befitting that a person who disgraces these holy things, now see, it's translated, be deprived of the world to come. But again, I say that doesn't mean that they won't be there. It means that there'll be a homeless person there. They'll have no level in the world to come, but they may very well be there. Because the world to come, he says, and the reason that is because the world to come is obviously a holy world. It's holy, all right? Now, Rabbi Basser has put in a couple of paragraphs here, 3 paragraphs, on this world, Ha'olam Haba, Ha'olam Hazeh, this world, and the next world, Ha'olam Haba. Even though we're not going to get into a huge study here, he wants us to see these few things. I don't know, maybe we should get into a huge study here, but no, we can't. We're not in this format, maybe in a different format, but not in this one. Okay. We'll do some, though, what he has here. He says, this Mishnah number 15, alludes to a Kabbalistic principle of creation and existence. And what he means by that is the Kabbalah comes to tell us how did HaShem create the worlds, because we know that everything actually in the entire creation is an expression. By the way, and this is, Rabbi Yitzhak Ginsburg, who is such a genius. It's just unbelievable sometimes, some of the things that he says and teaches and comes up with. He says something really, really beautiful. He says, HaShem, not only is he a scientist and an electrical engineer and a physics engineer and a chemist engineer and all of these things, okay? He says, really, he takes all of those things, all of the sciences that he created, and he makes into them art. Because the entire creation, from the highest world to the lowest, from this world to the world to come, it is all art. It's a piece of art. And he said, and every artist always, he said, even if they do it in a hidden way, they always, if they're pleased with their work, they sign their name. Yeah. And so Rabbi Ginsburg says something absolutely amazing. He says the core of all meditation, we have all kinds of different meditations, okay? But he says the core of Jewish meditation, of real Kabbalistic meditation, has to do with finding and discovering the signature of the four-letter name of Hashem in creation. It's very interesting, and that's a very good rule to follow. And then he begins to give a whole lot of different examples to show you how to do that, and using the sciences is one of those things. Using gematria is one of those things. The most famous example, in other words, everything in creation is going to be somehow connected to the four-letter name of Hashem, of Yud and Hey and Vav and a Hey, okay? The most famous and most simple illustration of that is the one from the Baal Shem Tov, which I've shared with you many times. How the Baal Shem Tov took a coin and said it's small, like the letter Yud. And then he took his hand, and a hand is, Hey is the fifth letter of the Hebrew alphabet, so it's five, the 5 fingers, and he takes the Yud and puts it in his hand. And then he extends his arm, because the next letter is Vav, which is like an arm. It's an extension. It's a connection, okay? And then drops the coin in somebody else's hand, and that's the final Hey. So the Baal Shem Tov's illustration is when you help somebody, when you give charity, when you help somebody in a real way, this is one of the signatures of Hashem in the creation. And it's also one of the ways to do what we call to unify the name, okay? Because in the creation, the way it is right now, the name is not always unified. We don't always see that Hashem is one. But that's one of the ways you can see it, and that you can actually unify His name. That's the idea. Now, what the Maharal is going to go to is actually based on a verse in Isaiah, Yeshayahu 26 and verse 4, where it tells us that with the first 2 letters of His name, okay, because see, that's the shortened form, is Yud and Hey, which is Yah. And by the way, this we can actually say this name. It's very interesting. We can't say the 4-letter name, but we can say this short 2-letter name. And we do it all the time. Like if you're reading the Psalms and Hallelujah, okay? It's on the end. It's in many people's names, okay? Yeshayahu, all right? Eliyahu, Elijah. Anyway, so let's look at this Kabbalistic principle. It says, Hashem created 2 worlds. In other words, this world, we know He created many levels, but it's talking about just what's going on right now. This world, Olam Hazeh, that's now, okay? And the world to come, Olam Haba, which will be the rectified world in the future. And by the way, we know that this world has existed at least already 15.34 billion years. So Okay, let's move on. Just thought I'd throw that in just to mess everybody up. Okay. So he created two worlds, this world and the world to come, and that fact is actually conveyed by his short name, Yud and Hey, all right, which is found in the verse, and he quotes from Isaiah chapter 26 and verse 4. For with Yud Hey, with Yah, those two letters, God fashioned the worlds. That's what Isaiah tells us. The world to come is actually represented by the letter Yud, the first letter, which symbolizes holiness and eternity. Now he has a note here, and he says, this point is developed at length at the beginning of chapter 5, meaning in this book. In the beginning of chapter 5, if you go actually all the way over there, the Maharal is going to give us, it's actually Rabbi Basser, is going to give us an entire lesson on the messages of numbers, okay, which will be very interesting. I don't want to go there right now because we'll cover it when we get there. But if you want to read it later, it's at the beginning of chapter 5. Okay, so the letter Yud is associated, he says, or symbolizes holiness and eternity, while this world is represented by the letter Hey. All right, now the letter Yud is 10, okay? The letter Hey is 5. That's an interesting thing because, and I know in his messages of numbers, he's going to show how 10 is always representative of completeness, of a complete unit of something. And so this world is only half of that, okay? Because it's 5, not 10. Okay. The two letters, he says, combined together as his name, convey that he has infused this physical world with holiness, and this physical world is associated with the world to come. And we know that that's true if we actually really begin to look at it. We make gradual changes. There will be events that will happen that will make a big jump. But most of the changes are actually gradual up to a point where the world to come, because if we look at the days of the Mashiach are described with many times, meaning once the Mashiach is here, okay, and once he begins to teach us, that is often described with the exact same language as the world to come. So it's not like 1 second we have this place and then poof, then we have a new place. It's all up to us. That's the key. Anyway, we can't go there because that'll make people even crazier, but it actually is up to us and our level and how close we want to come to HaShem. He says the holiness that is implied by the letter Yud of his name must be joined with this world, which is represented by the letter Hey. And this is the Kabbalistic idea of unifying his name. So he is going to say, if we bring holiness into the world to come will come much sooner. Anyway. Must be joined with this world represented by the letter Hey, which has the numerical value of 5. So, he says, this is the reason that this Mishnah number 15, this is amazing what the Maharal found. He found the reason that it lists exactly 5 physical mitzvot, 5 physical commandments that are holy and that are divine. And he tells us that if a person sins against them, if a person doesn't regard them, or disregards them, or holds them in low esteem, or criticizes them, or on and on and on, that he has lost his connection with the Yud of his name, which portrays the world to come. And this is the Maharal's reasoning, explanation behind it, on why Rabbi Elazar Hamodai says that person has no portion, no part in the world to come. Very interesting what he's saying. In simpler terms, he says, HaShem has placed us in a world which is a physical link to holiness in this life. And a corridor, this is the way the sages speak of it, a corridor to the holy world to come. One who rejects the link to holiness in this world has no means to have a place in the have a portion in the world to come. If you reject holiness in this world, then in a completely holy world, you'll have a hard time building a house. That's the idea. And I still don't say you'll have a hard, you won't be there. I don't think that's not the point of this. It's not the point. Rabbi Elazar Hamodai is not saying if you do these things, you go to hell for eternity. That's not what he said. Because unfortunately, that's a wrong concept to begin with. And it's not a Jewish concept. It's absolutely not a Jewish concept. But that's not what he's saying. And I'm only belaboring this point because I know how people think in the Western world, which is so influenced by certain teachings. And that is not what Rabbi Elazar Hamodai is saying. He is actually saying, you know, there's an illustration, I've heard some rabbis teach on it this way. Everything we are doing here in this life, no matter how many times you've been here, if you've been reincarnated a dozen times or whatever, it doesn't matter. Everything you're doing in this life, you're actually, and this is just an illustration, but you are actually building your home in the world to come. And you're doing, like the Ramchal says, every thought that we think, every word that we speak, and every action that we do or don't do is either adding to the side of holiness in all the worlds, or we're adding to the side of uncleanness in all the worlds. So everything we think, say, and do, we are either driving a nail or pulling one out of your apartment in the world to come. That's the idea of what's going on here. Okay. Baruch Hashem, we have finished Mishnah number 15 of chapter 3 of Pirkei Avot.
The five mitzvah up there?
Uh-huh.
What are they?
What are they?
Yeah,
They are the sacrifices, okay?
Oh, okay.
That's one. They're the festivals, that's two.
Oh, I see.
Humiliating a person in public, that's three. Nullifying the covenant, the Brit of Abraham, that's four. Perverting the Torah contrary to the halakha, that's five. Okay?
Okay.
That's a good question.
170.
Please.
What page what? Did I get
It's right here.
those five mitzvot? It's on the 177, actually. If you look at the Mishnah 15 itself, turn back, Rabbi Elazar Hamodai.
Oh, okay.
Okay? It's in there.
Gotcha.
One who desecrates sacred things, holy things, that's the sacrifices, okay? Disgraces the festivals, that's number 2. Humiliates his fellow in public, that's number 3. Nullifies the covenant or disregards the covenant, the Brit of our father Abraham, that's 4. Or who perverts the Torah contrary to the halakha, that's 5. Okay?
Could you place the replacement theology of the festivals in there?
I wasn't going to be critical of Christianity, but since you mentioned it, no, absolutely. Everything that I hate to say that, but everything I'm sure this was written against Sadducees, I'm pretty sure. But everything that they disregarded, unfortunately, Christianity also disregards.
That's a scary thing.
Well, can be. Okay, that's why I'm trying to move from this Mishnah. Let's move from here.
Okay.
Okay, chapter 3 and Mishnah number 16. We have just enough time in this particular lesson, probably just to read the Mishnah. And it's a nice one. Rabbi Yishmael says, be yielding to a superior, be pleasant to the young, and receive every person cheerfully. And somebody already says, well, I've heard somebody else say something like that before, and that was Shammai, because Shammai always says, receive every person with a cheerful face, okay? All right, let's see what the Maharal is saying. He says the order of all of these Mishnayot primarily follows the chronological sequence of the authors. In other words, they're coming in chronological order. Most of the time that's the case, not always. Rabbi Yishmael, the author of this Mishnah, he says, lived immediately after Rabbi Elazar, the Modaite. I like Hamodai, that's the way to really say it better, of the previous Mishnah. And he was contemporary with Rabbi Akiva of the next Mishnah. All right? And when we come to Rabbi Akiva, he is going to show us some unbelievable things. He says all of the Mishnayot are also organized according to subject. And this is also something to remember. It wasn't just a haphazard thing that they put it together this way. Here we return to the thought that was introduced back in Mishnah number 13. In Mishnah number 13, it said, you remember it talked about if the spirit of one's fellows is pleased with him. Okay? So Mishnah number 16 is returning to that thought, and it's doing that, it's telling us how the spirit of one's fellows, how people can be pleased with you, by presenting 3 ways of acting with a pleasant demeanor. Mishnah number 15, the one we just got out of, stated that the one who humiliates people in public loses his portion in the world to come. Rabbi Yishmael provides for us a positive contrast to that. So don't do that. What would you do? By promoting respect for each individual, even if it's somebody that you don't agree with at all, in a way that best fits the relationship with that person. So how does he start in and say it? Be yielding to a superior, and the translation is actually following the Rambam, pleasant to the young and receive every person cheerfully, but we're going to see that the Maharal thinks the second part of that needs to be translated in a different way. Anyway, he says this Mishnah identifies correct behavior for dealing with 3 categories of people: those who are his superiors, those who are junior to him, and those who are his peers. With his superiors, he should respond promptly to do as he's told. If he makes a request of someone younger than him, he should do so pleasantly, not in a way that's haughty or peremptory. The correct way to treat one's peers respectfully is to greet them cheerfully. Okay, let's end right there for just right now, because we need to pick up with an issue here on the next one, and we'll do that immediately in the very next one. That's okay with you? All right, Shalom Uvracha, peace and a blessing.
Thank you for joining us in our study. If you enjoyed this study and are interested in learning more from the Torah and the sages of Israel, then check us out on the internet at www.bfm101.com, or you may contact us toll-free at 1-800-639-0169. Our mailing address is Biblical Faith, P.O. Box 2, Abilene, Texas 79604. Until next time, we wish you Shalom Uvracha, peace and a blessing.